In this lesson, we're going to look at a really cool effect that is available in this program, and it's probably going to be your favorite effect moving forward because it's really simple to use, but the effect that you get from it, the result that you get from it, looks like something that you've spent hours working on. So the result is really remarkable, but it's created by a few clicks and a few adjustments. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to import my footage. And in your resources, you have two Adobe Illustrator files. Just bring them in. And we're going to look at a bunch of examples. So these are going to be one of the examples. So we're going to use this effect with the Adobe Illustrator files, also with some shapes and the pen tool, things that we've learned and we know how to use. So let's go ahead and make a new composition as always. Let's call this trim path, which is the name of the effect. I'm going to close the paint panel. And just whenever you're working with After Effects, make sure you only have the panels that you need. That way you're going to have a lot more space and things will just look more organized. Alright, so let's make a new solid. Right click in your timeline, new solid, so we can see the effects. Choose a bright color, and okay. So on this solid, we're going to add our cool little animations. I'm going to grab the pen tool. I'm going to start with an easy one. Make sure you have the star next to your cursor and not this box. So click away from any of the layers and we're going to turn off the fill. So right now it's white. Click on the text fill, set it to none, hit OK. Tap on the stroke text, add the solid color, which is the second one, hit OK. And then select the color and we're going to choose something bright, something vibrant so that we can see. Now that we have our thing, we can also adjust the width of the pixels. I'm going to go for 5 and just go ahead and make a curve or a straight line. I'm going to click and drag to make my curve. I'm just making a line like this. Alright, click away. This is our line. And if you want, you can still go and change the width. If you open Shape Layer 1, open Contents, Shape 1, go to Stroke 1. You can always change the stroke width from 5, and you can just add on to that. Let's go for like maybe 8. Let's just go for 10. Type 10 or any number that you want. You can also change the color. So this is not permanent. You still have time and resources to come back and change that. So we already know how to do this. We learned this in previous lessons. But what we're going to do is to animate this line. So when you open Shape Layer 1 and you bring down these guys, there's this Add button. This is where we're going to add that animation. So if you just click on this play button, you have all of these animations and we're going to go to Trim Paths. And this is going to be your new favorite. So once you click this, you're going to have a Trim Paths 1 in your shape layer. Go ahead and open that and then we get this start and offset stopwatches. So basically, if you remember from previous lessons, when you have a start and end stopwatch, that means you're going to make your line appear like this, and then after 5 seconds it's going to be full. So it's going to essentially show the process of you drawing the line, and start is where it starts and end is where it ends. So if I add a start stopwatch from 0% and move in a few frames, maybe add it to 100, this is what I'm going to get. So it's going to start from where I started, which in our case is the bottom left. But if you go for, put this to 100, from 100, and then put this to 0, you're going to get this. And you can also work with the end. So basically, you just do the exact same thing. So 100 to 0, type 0. you're going to get this cool effect. And if you do it the opposite, so 0 from 100, oops, from the end, 0 to 100, we're going to get this effect. So it's like showing how this line was made. It can also be applied to spirals, any shape that you want essentially. So now once we have this, we can do a lot of cool things with it. And before that, I'm just going to trim my timeline. Let's go for like 2 seconds. Hit N on your keyboard to trim the rest. So we only have 2 seconds and we don't need to get 30 seconds of this. And now that we know how this works, let's go ahead and make some cool animations. So I'm going to, oops, get that back, add a text layer just so we have kind of a base to work on. Let's type in hello, Control A. I'm going to change the color to maybe black, something we can see. And I'm just going to drag it here. And if you go to layer, let's see, transform, just put the center anchor point in layer content so we get this anchor point here. Or you could just grab this, but this is just quicker. And I'm just going to make this text appear. So S, oops, scale it to 0. Turn on the stopwatch. Control right arrow key to move in a few seconds. Frames, not seconds. And then turn this to 100. So this guy appears and we have this line. And by the way, if at any point you didn't like the shape, you can always just select the layer and go back in with the pen tool. So you can see we have the points. You can click on that point, maybe change the curve if you want, bring it down. And you can always just come back and readjust your thing or even delete a point like I did right now. I'm going to stretch this like so. Go back with my selection tool and I'm going to click it again. Then I'll just move it towards the center. And by the way, if you have the Align tab in Window, get Align, you can always just center the things. So like that, it was going to be in the center. But again, we have the problem with the anchor point. So just go to select that layer, go to Layer, Transform, Center Anchor Point in Layer Content. And now if I put it in the center, it's going to be positioned based on the anchor point. So I'm just going to bring it up like so. Once I have chosen my location, I'm going to make sure it's aligned horizontally, not vertically, because we don't want it to be in the center. That's where the text is. I'm also going to make this a little bigger, and then I'll make sure that it's in the center. Readjust my thing. And now we have this this kind of text with an underline. I'm also going to drag the Align tab up here so I have my timeline clean. Okay, so we can go ahead and just add, as in we already did add the animation. So you see the text appears and then the line starts animating before the text is here. So it's something like this. But we can even go a step further and kind of animate it more. Go to Trim Paths, and I'm going to delete these for a second. What we're going to do is to move in a few frames, not from the start, like this, and turn on our end anchor point, our end animation. So set it to 0, then turn on the stopwatch, but make sure you are a few seconds in. You can also expand this. And we're going to go towards somewhere in the middle. Let's go for like 10 frames and then make it 100 here. But then instead of only using this, we're going to go in the beginning of our composition and we're going to set the start to 100, then turn on the stopwatch and then kind of move this way. You can always just come back and readjust things and set the start to 0 here. Let's F9 everything. So you drag all the keyframes, hit F9, come back from the beginning, And this is what we have. So we have kind of this repeating animation, which you can keep if you want. You can also delete one of the animations and just keep the regular thing. So if I turn this off, we only have, oops. Make sure you only select one of them. So I remove the start. This is what we're going to be left with. So you can choose whichever you want. And we're going to go back to what we had. So Control Z to get these two. And let's say this is what I want. But I want more than one line or maybe more than one shape. So if I want to add more, it would take me a long time to, let me turn this to third. It would take me a long time to create a shape from the beginning, add the trim paths, add the exact same animation, and it's just going to be really time consuming. So what I can do is to go on my shape layer 1, Control or Command D to duplicate. But instead of having the exact same line, I'm going to open the contents and then delete shape 1. So hit backspace and now we have the settings but no shape. So on the contents, we're going to grab the pen tool and I'm going to just draw a random line. Let's say something up here. So you can see this shape went in shape layer 2 with all of the trim paths setting. So we kind of saved ourselves a lot of time. I'm gonna make like another curve up here and move away. Hit V on your keyboard. And we're just gonna move this like somewhere down. Again, the anchor point is somewhere random. Go to Layer, Transform, Center Anchor Point in Layer Content. So now it's in the center. I don't remember where my text was, so I'm going to go in a few frames and then just adjust it. In the Align tab, I want to make sure it's centered horizontally, so click that once and you should have a nice center line. So if I click away from this, we're going to have the exact same animations. You can see the line's a little bit crooked, but again, you can always go back in, get your pen tool, and just adjust the line. And if you want it to not look like this, you can also go in the shape layer, then go to Layer, Transform, and we're going to flip horizontally. Sorry, vertically, not horizontally. So now it's like different. And you can also do it vertically. Flip vertical, do anything you want. Let's also change the color. I'm not happy with the blue. Let's go for like a green color. Stroke width, add, or let's keep it that color. The same width. So this is what we have. They both appear at the same time. It's the same animation, but again, you can always just kind of expand your work. So I'm going to hit V on my keyboard and let's say the first line appears here. I'm going to make the second line come in somewhere like this. So it's going to be like that. And we can always make the beginning disappear as well. Anything you want. You can add a scale. So hit S on your keyboard. So we're going to set it to 0 here. Control right arrow key. Next frame, we're going to make it 100. Do the same thing for the other guys so they don't suddenly appear. Set this to 0. Turn on the stopwatch. Control or Command right arrow key. Turn this to 100. So essentially we have this, and if it's still not appearing, like the appearance is sudden, you can just add space. So you can see it kind of like pops in. Add the same amount. So it like appears like that. And if it's still too much, you can always just add an opacity animation. So 0%. Turn on the stopwatch. And then make it 100 here. So it's going to be like this. And you can just play around with this. There's just so much you could do with this animation type. Just motion graphics in general. the possibilities are endless. Select both keyframe, hit F9. Boom. Alright, so this was just the basics of how it works. We can now get into other types and see what we can do exactly with this effect. So I'm going to just delete everything except the white solid. And if at any point you think that you might delete your solid, you can always just go ahead and lock it. So now you cannot move it, you can't delete it, and you can't add any effects on it. So you're kind of saving yourself the trouble, and you won't be affecting this layer accidentally. All right, now let's get to shapes. You can always just drag, long click on one of these, let's get a star, get yourself a shape, add a nice color to it, let's go with the blue. Hold down Shift if you want a perfect shape, like so, and the anchor point comes in like so. And if you want the anchor point to be in the middle when you create shapes, you can go to Edit, Preferences, and then go to General. And then here, just make sure you have Center Anchor Point in New Shape Layers turned on. So if you don't have that turned on when you make a shape, the anchor point might just be like somewhere here or in the corner. And to save yourself the trouble, you can just turn that on. But if for any reason it was away from the original center point, you can select that layer, go to Layer, Transform, Center Anchor Point in Layer Content. And see, I could use that. So let's go to Layer, Transform, and hit that. Now it's in the center. Now I want to make sure my shape is in the center, so press this, and now it's in the center. Alright, so now that I have my shape, I can go ahead and add that trim paths thing to it, open that up, and if I make a start animation and an end one, you can see just how this is animated. If you stretch that, it's going to move in a lot more slower. If you bring it in closer, it's going to move in faster. And I forgot to mention that there's like some adjustments that we could do to the cap of these lines. You can see it's sharp. If you go in the, go to Polystar. If you go to Polystar 1, which is the name of our shape, you can go in the stroke, and there's this thing for line cap. Just change it from butt cap to round cap, and now it's rounded. Let's zoom in so we can see. It's rounded. This is what it looked like before. See, it's sharp. Make it round. There's also a projecting cap. The round one looks better, so just go with the round, and then you can see that it's just round as it goes on. Change this to fit. And so this is what we have. We could do another cool thing with this, which is to, like we did last time, duplicate this layer, Control D, and we're going to make the second star a little bigger than the original star. So just drag one of the corners and make it bigger than the star. You can position it in the center, or just hit these. I need to move it up a bit. Use the arrow keys to make like really small movements. And now, once I play this, you can see they're moving at the same time. But that's not what we want, because what's the point of adding two if this is what it's going to look like? So we're going to go into first Polystar. And let's close the stroke. Go to the Trim Paths thing. Trim Paths option. And I'm going to just add this here. Bring this like so. And then make an end Polystar. This one I believe is 0. Yeah. So in the end, we want to make it 100, and then come in somewhere around here and then make it 0. So this is what we have. It's like a cool little thing. Let me turn off the second star so we can focus on one for now. So you can see it's like moving from both ends and it's coming back. This is something that you can do. Looks cool, and you can also do something like this. Looks like so. You can just play around with these and see what works best for you. If you try to move them around, it's going to go from the opposite direction. And if you do this, let me just bring these two from the start. So we have the animation throughout the entire composition. And we have this cool line effect. And we can also try something else. So let's delete all of these. And we're going to move in maybe a few seconds. Turn the start to 100. Turn on the keyframe. Move in around maybe 5 frames and then turn it to 0. And we're also going to do the same thing with the end, but we're going to come in like so. 100, start, and then we're going to put the zeros somewhere around here. 0. So essentially this is what we have. One line just going around like so. And we can now turn on, or actually let's delete the second one, Control D. And in the second one, we're just going to make it bigger like we did with the last shape. Move it up a few frames, a few pixels, spaces, I guess. And we have this dabble star tracing thingy. But if we want it to be the exact opposite, all we have to do is to just open Trim Paths 1, and we're going to kind of flip the entire thing. So we're going to delete this and move in to where the star appears, the first one. Add a 0 keyframe. Hit start. And let's see. Or better yet, we can just move the keyframes for this one. So let's say it starts maybe after the first star. So it looks something like this. Or we can make it start in the beginning. So it's like this. And like I said, you could just play around with these and see what works best for you. And just see, if you stretch these out, it's going to be longer. So maybe we could move these guys like this. So we have a longer line for the second star compared to the first star. And we have this nice little thingy. And we could just duplicate this as many times as we want. So we have a nice little star move animation. Now this works better with shapes that don't have that many sides. The best shape would obviously be a circle. There's no sides in it. So let's try that with a circle. Get the ellipse tool, go from the beginning, hold down Shift on your keyboard and make a perfect circle. You can see the anchor point jumps in the center. Center it with the Align tab. Press this and that. And we're going to do the same thing with this circle. So let's add like a really thick width side, so 20 pixels. Let's add the trim paths, go in the beginning, open trim paths 1. We're going to set the start, again come in here to 100, turn on the stopwatch, then move into maybe 10 frames, set it to 0. Then we're going to move in a bit forward, a bit away from the start keyframe, turn on the end for 100, and then here for 0. So we have this, and like I said, if you add this in, we're going to have a longer line. And now we could just go ahead and Control D on this, maybe make the second one smaller. Hit V on your keyboard so you can move this, maybe make it a little bit smaller. All right, Control D again. Let's make this like bigger. So we have this, and you can kind of see the spaces between each one. So now we have 3 circles moving in at the same time. The last one's a bit too far. All right, and like I said, you can always just go back in, maybe shape layer 1, change it from 20, let's go for like 8. So we have this third one, which is the biggest one. Let's go on the second one and just add this to maybe 10. Let's give this like 25. And just play around with these till you have a nice separation effect. I'm also gonna make the caps round because it's a circle. And we just want to make it look nice. Go to stroke 1, come down, round cap. And you could also duplicate after you've set the round cap. I'm just going to do it now. Stroke 1, come down, round cap. Close that. And finally, oops, we have the stroke 1, round cap. So now we have 3 lines making a circle. Now, to make this even more interesting, we can use the basic transform options like scale, rotation, opacity, and position to just make this even cooler. So hit R on each one and maybe move in a few frames so you can see the lines. And we could just rotate the lines. Let's hit R on this too. Just don't turn on the stopwatch so it's like a permanent thing. Maybe add this here. You can now see that my circle isn't exactly perfect. That's okay. Let's add this. Make it like so. So now these guys are moving like this. Now what we can do is to select, let me just rename these. Circle 2, it's actually the second one. Bring this guy down, right click, circle 1, circle 3. It always helps to name your layers. Select all of them, Control D, so we have 3 more. And we're gonna just bring these up here. So 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to go to Layer, Transform, and let's just flip these vertically. So now we have this cool multiple circle thingies. And you can also just maybe rotate and flip it as many times as you want. Transform, horizontal, and the possibilities are just endless. So now we have this cool circle thing. But if your shapes are a perfect circle, it's going to look even better. You can see that mine, some of them look a little bit squished. That's all right. Let's click away and maybe select all of them. And just, oops, I brought the text tool. Like that. Hit V and just kind of stretch the entire thing out. So we have this thing. And then here, I'm gonna go to the point where all the circles are in. And then let's say grab the text tool and just type something in like hello, Control A. Let's set this like that. Bring it here. Maybe add like a purple color, make it look nice. Add a silly little thing. And I'm going to change the anchor point to the center, was in the corner. Align it in the center. But now we have to see if it's in the center of our circle animation. It's not. Let's move it up a little. Still a little bit off. Let that play again. All right, I'm gonna close this. You can go in each of the circles and you can see the outline. So you can move the text away. Or let's actually center these guys. Center that. They're mostly centered, but I believe this circle is, which is the first one, it's kind of moving in on the text. Let's move the text a little bit here. Or let's make it a little smaller so it doesn't interfere with these circles. Let's play that back. Have a look. Alright, so it looks better now. Now we have this cool little animation. Let's also add like a scale pop effect to the text. 0, come here, get 87 because we made it smaller. So now we have this text. Let's bring this in closer so it appears more suddenly. And there's our text. We can also make it slowly become 100%. So add like a big space. That's kind of like zooming in like this. And yeah, so this was a simple explanation of how this thing works, the trim paths option. Now let's have a look at it with the Illustrator files that we brought in. I'm gonna just delete all of these guys except the white solid. Because we locked it, we can't delete it even if we wanted to. So that's a good thing about the lock thing. Alright, so let's go ahead and add our line art. This is the first one. And I just made this based on a line art that I found online. But because it needs to be one line with the pen tool in either Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, preferably Adobe Illustrator because it needs to be a vector file. You can see it says vector art. If it's in Photoshop and you don't know how to use Illustrator, you can just draw it in Photoshop and then open it in Illustrator and save the file as an Illustrator file. So, or you could just make this in Illustrator from the start, whichever way you want. But if you're going to do this yourself, make sure it's one stroke using the pen tool, or it could be 2 strokes, but it needs to be clearly separate. So if we look at our second example, let me move it here. You can see we have another separate stroke, but it's clearly obvious that it's not part of this one line thing. Let's delete that. Alright, so if we open this Illustrator file, we don't have that add option. That is because this is not a shape. So what we need to do is just go in here and go to Layer, Create, Convert Shapes, Create Shapes from Vector Layer. So now we have this line art outlines. And we can go ahead and just delete the line art Adobe Illustrator file. You can see it's the exact same art and it's just a shape file now. Now if we open this, we have the trim path or just the animation option. And just go ahead and add a trim path. Open this up. And by the way, we can always just open the groups. You can open the paths and just animate the paths, or you can go to merge, go to stroke 1. You can maybe add to the color, the opacity, and just anything you want. I am going to change this from butt cap to round cap before I start. I'm going to see how it looks. It might not look that cool. Let's actually not do that. So if we saw that there's a need for it, we could go for it. Right, so let's add the trim paths. Open that up. And just like we did so far, move in a few frames. 0, start, and then go in maybe 1 second. Make it 100. So this is what we have. You can see it like undoes itself. Let's go for the opposite. So I want it to appear 100, 0. So it's like drawing itself. And like I said, you can always just add space between the 2 keyframes so you get this really slow animation. So this is great for maybe storytelling if you have like a YouTube video where you're trying to show a story through drawings. You can just do this, and the direction goes according to the direction that you took with the pen tool in either Photoshop or Illustrator. So if you start at a point from, let's say, the lips, it's going to start from the lips, and if you ended the illustration on the eye, it's going to end in the eye. So it's basically copying the data that you created in either Illustrator or Photoshop, and it's bringing it in to After Effects. So this is how it works with this file. Let's look at how we can kind of spice things up. We do the same thing we did with the previous thing where we brought them in like so, and then we added the end stopwatch here and 0 here. Let's see how this looks. Add a few things. So it's going to kind of like disappear like that. And if you have a, let's actually duplicate this so I can show you what I mean. I'm going to delete trim paths from the second one. Delete that, so it's just a regular illustration. Let's call this base. I'm going to bring base below line arts, and I'm going to open line arts, and let's actually do that in base. So go in base, group 1, come down to stroke 1, and just change the stroke width to 12. So it's something big. Let's go for 10 actually. Something big, we have a gray color, just leave it be. And then in the line art, we're going to open group 1, go to stroke 1, and let's add a like half the size. So that was 10, this is 5. Change the color to, let's say, like something like this, red. And so once we add that animation, it's going to look something like this. And if you want, let's try to add a glow thing to this. So now we have this glowing red line going across our art, which is a great way to kind of showcase your art. If you make line art yourself, it's a nice little adjustment. All right, so this was with one of the lines. You can see we added the trim paths. It looks great, especially when the lines lead to a finished drawing like this one. Now let's look at our second Illustrator file where we had 2 separate line arts. Delete this one, go to project, bring in line art 2, like this, and set this to full. If you saw that the drawings are like kind of, let me bring this here. If I expand this, you can see it's kind of like pixelated. That's because this is on third. If you bring it on full, it's good quality. So again, click that, go to layer, create shapes from vector file, delete that. I'm going to duplicate this, base, turn off the visibility, open this up, and add the trim paths. And let's add the start thing. So 100 here, turn on the stopwatch, go to the end and add 0. Also forgot to F9 both things. So now if let's go back, play this, you can see they're both starting from the part, so it's starting at the same time. This is essentially what happens when you have 2 separate shapes in your Illustrator or Photoshop file, and it's going to look something like this. Again, we can do the animation with the second base or the second copy. Just have to do this twice because there's 2 groups. Stroke 1, let's make this 4. Let's make this round cap as well. And where's the color? Here it is. Add like a green, a vibrant green. So it's looking like that character from Kim Possible. Forgot her name. Make the second or the base clip, base footage, make that like twice the number, so 8. Oops, this was the second one actually. Turn this to 4, add the same green color, which you could also try to like high drop it so we get the exact same colors for both ends. So, oops, I just added that to the wrong thing. Control Z. So this is our base thing. So what we want to do here is to actually just make this larger. So 8. We're going to add the neon color to the second thing, the thing that goes on top. Open stroke 1, 4, change this to a neon green color. We can also just copy the hex code here. This is 4, let's go for like 2. Just something to just be barely visible. I don't want it to be covering the original art. Copy, paste the code here. Change this from 4 to 2. You can also go ahead and add the glow effect on top. And let's add to the radius. Do what you want with the glow. We already learned about this. So now we have this art, and this is just going to like slowly cover it in. The base color, it's a little bit too intense. I'm just going to go in base and group 1. The group 2 is alright, just group 1 looks a little bit weird. Go to stroke, change this to round cap. Let's see, merge path. Right. Change this to round cap. Alright. And I wanted to reduce the size because it looks really chunky. So just go to stroke 1. Instead of 8, let's go for like 6. Alright, that looks better. Filter join, let's go for a round join. Stroke is gone. Let's go to group 2 and change this stroke into, I believe 6 was the number we went with. And then we're just going to hit M on this layer to close off the properties. And now we have this little cool outline animation of the art. So that was how you use the Adobe Illustrator files. Now, if we were to make another form of layer, let's try to make a shape layer, delete those, get the text tool, and we're just going to type something random. And it would be better if we use a cursive font, just to match the aesthetic that we got going on right now. So this is a cursive font, it's a text layer, but as you can see, there is no animation for trim paths. We have different options for this layer. So this will not work with like other layers. It has to be a shape layer, so I just made this random text layer. You can see in animate, we don't really have that trim paths thing that we wanted. And if you go in text, we have just the basic things that we talked about. And yeah, so trim paths, that specific effect is for shapes. And I did want to show another type of shape. So it's not just basic lines and circles, it can also be rather complicated shapes. Let's try like a spiral. Let's go for like another line. Oops. It's a little bit off. Alright, let's say this is my shape. Here, if we added trim paths, it's going to work brilliantly. So just like we did with all the other ones, if we set this to 100, this is going to start from the end. Set this to 100. let me just type that. 100, turn on the stopwatch, go in here, set it to 0. It's going to start from the outside. Let's just do it with the end, so like the opposite. 0, 100. So like starts from here. You can do the opposite direction if you want. But with like spirals or shapes like this, let me like duplicate a few and hit V to just maybe make this smaller. Got another one. Move this here. Another one. Make it medium sized. Set another one too. And make this like this. Just reposition these random lines. You can also just go in here, add different colors so they stand out. Let's just quickly add some random colors to each of these guys. An orange one for this. Alright, so we have the trim paths happening for each one, but it's two identical and it's looking a bit creepy. One way that you can kind of save yourself time when you're trying to add, I guess, accents to your composition is to first duplicate them, and then you can go ahead and just kind of flip each one. That's a way to kind of make things different. So if you flip it, it's going to stand out. Let's get the third one in the back and also flip that. So we have a random effect. I'm also going to flip that one vertically so it looks different. Let's go to shape 2 and just do, let's go to shape 1. Layer, transform, flip, vertical. So now shape-wise they look different, but they are a spiral, and spirals are supposed to go around, so just hit R on each one. And we're going to, first of all, move these guys. Like create different spaces for each one. Like that, like that. And then I'm going to turn on the stopwatch. So basically none of them start from the beginning. Turn on the stopwatch, go to the end, and we're just gonna go for like 360. Just want them to continue turning and we don't want them to stop. So we're going to just grab those two keyframes, go on the next one, copy. You can see that one's also turning. Just copy and paste because the position isn't really important here. We're just making these things look, we're just making them turn at the same time. So F9 each of the keyframes. I'm hitting R on each of these layers to show the rotation properties, which is just 2 keyframes. And also, if you want them to go on the opposite direction, you can simply, when this is 0, go on the last one, delete the last one, and instead of positive 360, you can go negative 360, which is going to go the opposite way. So this is 1, this is negative 1. And I'm going to go and like another one here, turn that, delete that keyframe, or just select it and write negative 1. So we're going to have these lines. I also want to change the cap to round. I always forget to do that. Just hit U, or we have to actually get it to open. Shape 1, stroke 1, round cap. Open the next one, come down to contents. Shape 1, stroke 1. Next one, open that, contents. Shape 1, stroke 1, round cap. Then finally the last one that is closed, just gotta open it up. Shape 1, stroke 1, round cap. Now let's select each one, each of the layers, control and then click, and hit M to close our properties. And now we have these rotating effects. You can also add maybe a position keyframe. So we have, you're like moving around, and you can just really go crazy with the animations because you do have some really random shapes right now. So it would only make sense if they have like weird movements. And yeah, so this is how the trim paths work. As you saw, it's really simple to use, but the effects look pretty nice, and you could use this to maybe complement your text, like maybe add a text there and make that circular rotation thing around it to kind of emphasize on the message that you wrote. You can use it as like a background animation like this, maybe lower the opacity and then place your maybe an image on top or your text on top. You can also just add them as accents. So you make them really tiny, and whatever text or image you have here, you can just put these guys all around, but they're really small. So it's like, it looks better. You can also do something else that I can kind of use. If you're going to turn these into accents, this is a cool thing that you can do. So just open up, let me click away one of the layers, go to the contents, shape 1, go to stroke 1, and we're going to go to stroke width. So basically we're going to move in like here, make the stroke width full, or you could do the opposite. Let's actually make it 0. Just remember 15 because that's the number of your thing, the width that you had, which here's a great time to kind of change the width as well. So you can see the line suddenly appears. I'm just going to make it, see where the animation begins, bring my time indicator there, and add this stroke width, and then hit F9 on this. Let's do the same thing with each one. Move in to the next one where it begins. Contents, shape 1, stroke 1, stroke width. Turn this to 0. So the last one was 10. We can kind of make this one, see where it's like a full circle. Let's go for here. This one we could, because it's in the back, it needs to be smaller. Let's go for like 7, then F9. The more different each of the layers are, the cooler it's going to look once you look at it from afar. So just try to make them as different as you can. Try not to have identical stroke width and shapes. Not the shape, but the stroke width and the position of each of those shapes. Just try to make them different. That's also small, so let's go for like 4. F9 on both of these, and then finally we have the one in the front, which is this guy. Open that, stroke 1, come down, and we're going to set this to 0. Turn this on, come to 1 second, turn this to like 18, so it's like the biggest one. Turn these off. We can also add a scale animation, hit S, and we're going to just make this 0. Turn on the stopwatch, make it appear like a few frames in, like 2 frames in, 100, F9, S, 0. So this was 74. Remember the numbers that you had. So actually it was negative 74. Forgot. Negative 74. So it's the opposite. F9. So it's not 0 or 100. If you look here, like this is 100 because we didn't really change it. You can go ahead and add like a 0 here, and then here we're going to add like 120. Or actually, let's go for like 90. Negative 90. Let's actually the one above it was negative, so just make it positive. I believe this guy is there. This guy's negative, so if you hit S, you can see it's negative 74. Turn this to 0, keep negative 74 in mind. I'm going to actually make it like negative 64. Alright, hit F9. Now let's have a look at the animation. So the thickness is going to appear and they're kind of like popping in because of the scale. And this just looks a lot better. And you could just go ahead and add as many animations as you want. The ones we've learned so far are really helpful for these type of motion graphics. And that is just how the trim paths work. It was a rather long lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you guys in the next one.